everyone, welcome back to another episode. Today I have the wonderful Kay Sibson. She is a holistic business strategist. Kay, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Very excited for this one. First easy question, where in the world are you?
I'm in Montana for the moment. I grew up in California though, so I miss the ocean. I feel like a landlocked mermaid in Montana, but otherwise it's beautiful. And we're here for now. But I've lived here most of my life at this point.
Oh, wonderful. Wait, so Montana is the one which has, is it the Yellowstone? It's based in there.
Yes. Yeah.
My friend goes, Yellowstone, is that a documentary? I'm like, sure. Yeah, maybe.
I don't think
so now
it
we
is.
all think that's that's what we think happens in Montana though. So,
actually one of the diners that they eat at is actually down the street from my house. So
there we go.
Yeah,
so it's almost
I haven't seen the show, but that's what it's known for now.
I mean, I just know there's cowboy people. Well, I say cowboys, people with cowboy hats.
Yeah.
I don't know if they are cowboys or not.
I think they are cowboys, cool. But that's not like a normal thing here.
Okay, I mean, but according to Yellowstone, it is. So who's right? The TV show or you who lived there? I don't know. Anyway, now that I've completely confused everybody, what is a holistic business strategist?
It's a great question. I don't know if you know this, but a lot of the coaching industry, the consulting industry, there isn't like a set scope of practice of what we do. Mm-hmm. And so it really varies between every single person. And so I'm technically a consultant, but I've chosen the word strategist because a lot of people don't know what consultant means. So it becomes really jargony. And then you have like the coaching world, which is just slightly different. And a lot of times they are intertwined. And so they get confused a lot. And I'm not here to like correct anyone's definition of what coaching and consulting is. But basically what I do is I help small business owners really set foundations for energetic stability, financial stability, to be able to grow and kind of pave their own paths and do what they want to do in a way that's not to the point of burnout. So it looks really different for every single person. And I definitely take probably more creative approach, but I have a background in corporate. And so I kind of meld in all of the things I've ever done and the type of people I'm working with, which are normally multi-passionates. I work mostly with women and creatives and intuitives. And so it's just kind of like a mosh podge of a lot of things. But what's different about, like, in my definition of coaching versus consulting / strategist is coaching is a lot about helping guide you to find your own answers, right? And the how on your own in a way. So it's a lot more of like the personal development side, which I'm really passionate about. As a strategist, I'll meld some of that in, but then I actually help create the plan for you and help you like troubleshoot and execute and figure things out from there. So it's much pulling the answers from you, but it's helping you find your own answers as well. But then we actually come up with the step-by-step plan. So there's just a little more structure to it. And like you're at point A, let's get you to point B. And this is how you can do it on like a practical side. But we're also working through the personal development side and what it means to step into that ownership of your business if you're not currently doing that. And it's a meld of a lot of different things. And it really, again, varies on the different like person, the business, the goals. But holistic side is really focusing on values, their goals, their purpose, their mission, and not like a cookie cutter approach. And just looking at them from all aspects and not just making more of it. So like short and sweet.
No, I love that. And I think my frustration, again, not going to pick on coaches because technically some of what I do is coaching. But I am very much a person who sometimes I don't have the answer. And so if I'm working with someone to help me figure stuff out, I don't want them to coach me to figure out something. I want them to tell me how to do the thing, because the reason I'm here is because I don't know how to do the thing.
Right.
I think it's a really good point you make about people not understanding the difference between consulting and coaching and all the rest of it, because like from a personal development point of view, absolutely, it's a personal journey. Yeah. It is about helping you to find that answer. But when it comes to your business, I have seen people get frustrated with business coaches because they just want the answer.
Yeah.
They don't want to sit there and do whatever until the answer comes to them. Like they want the answer so they can progress now, not when they've gone through a process so that they're aware of things. So I think what you do is really important, and I love the distinction that you make.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, and I think being a business owner is such a journey, and I think it is so much of a personal development journey. So I want to definitely like that part can't be skipped over. Like you can only grow in your business as much as you're willing to grow as a person. As far as like coming in with a strategy for you, a lot of times we'll try to implement a strategy based on what they want to, what they want to do, what they're focusing on, and what's happening in the industry, even just based on their preferences. So they're like, oh, I don't want to be on camera. Okay, well, then this is how we're going to try this marketing approach, right? It's honoring people where they're at, but then and giving them a strategy. But a lot of times what happens is that even if we had like the perfect strategy for something that works for everybody, right? Like a cookie cutter option, when you apply it, it doesn't work. It doesn't actually results that they want. So then we get into like the troubleshooting, the like experimentation side of things, and we get to tweak it more towards them and their actual like what's working for them. Then again, trying to put on something that isn't meant for the business owner, like a strategy that doesn't align with them. So the personal development side does come in to a degree, but I do agree that like a lot of times we're just like, okay, what do I do next? And so we give them, I give them options of this is what you can do next. If I were you, I'd do X, Y, Z, and this is what we could look at. Let's try this. Have you tried that? And so it is going through those things, but then it still becomes an experimentation process to figure out what's truly going to work for them. And then working through the issues that do come up because issues come up. So it's just like
For sure.
a process in its own, which is so fun. But that's also why I would never like be like, okay, so like if this is what you want to do in business, this is exactly the way to do it, because that's still not going to work either. And there's people that sell this like cookie cutter approach. And that's also frustrating as someone that's like, okay, but have you actually tried applying that? Does it work for every situation? No, it doesn't. And a lot of times finding people and business owners that are more like heart-centered, and they're not wanting just the cookie cutter, like make money. Like that's not what they're wanting. And so to be able to help craft journey with them while they're doing the personal development stuff. And sometimes I work with people that are working with coaches. So to be able to help supplement that is just like such a really cool experience.
Definitely. It reminds me of working in corporate and the consulting that I've done in the past. And from a program management point of view, there's loads of methodologies out there, if waterfall, agile, there's variance on agile. And I remember so many times I've had this conversation with people, which is you take the elements that work for you in that situation.
Yep.
And I used to joke and say, like, I'm not the right person to ask if you want to have the purest approach to anything.
Right.
Because I don't do anything by the book, because
No.
I take and even now in therapy, I'm the same thing. Like if you look at the different therapeutic methods that I use, for me, there's the science, which is what is that process, what is the formula. Then there's the art, which is now how do you apply it for real in the situations, and to do that you need to know which bits work for this person and which bits won't work.
Right.
I think that's exactly what you're navigating with what you do.
Yeah,
right?
of course. And in that too, finding the blocks, or like knowing what kind of blocks they're already going to have. So like for me, it's like, okay, they don't have a lot of money. So like flexibility to implement a new thing or invest in something. So then we have to create a different approach using the same kind of strategy, but we have to put a different spin on it for them. So it makes sense. So that way I feel like it's, in your work, especially too, like keeping it aligned with that person, it's not going to help anybody if it doesn't actually like resonate for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we talk about therapeutic alliance, but actually, again, with any kind of business, coaching, consulting relationship, there is an alliance with you.
Yeah.
It's all about trust
Yeah.
and that relationship, and putting the trust in you to do what's right for them, not just do what works for you.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's definitely been, that was a little bit of a learning curve for me too, in the sense of like, me as a person anyway, not necessarily with how I was working with people, but me as a person, I want the right way to do it. And there is no one right way. There's so many ways to do it all. And so to be able to allow that own flexibility for myself to then be able to, has helped me with my clients too, because then I get really creative with like, oh wait, how could we actually approach this in a way that's like, yes, we've seen this is what's been done, but how do we actually make this fit in a way that's getting to the same result? Touched on that briefly as far as like the journey of finding what's going to work for someone. But I had my own rigidity in how I was doing things for myself that I had to like kind of like go of and be like, wait, it's possible. Like any way is
Mm.
possible. We just have to find the way to do it that makes sense for us. And so letting go of there being one right answer, I think has been key too.
That's probably a rule of life, is letting go of there being one right answer, right?
I know. I just wanted the book version, the step-by-step guide to life and business, and that doesn't exist. So
It's like, wait, I was told I get an education, I get a good job. Like, why isn't that not a thing? Anyway, we can't solve that one.
no, not yet.
No. What brought you to this then? So you said you worked in corporate. What made you shift from the corporate world to being independent?
Well, I feel like I started more as a creative and then shifted into corporate and then switched back out of it. So I actually have a degree in stage management and theater. So
Oh, it's really cool.
I did theater for many years and studied it, but all while doing that, in school and stuff, I did admin work. I worked in offices. And then after college, getting that education you're supposed to have, I actually decided I didn't want to do stage management professionally and not like long term. It would require things of me that I didn't want to anymore. And I just was like, let's just go get that safe office job. So that's why I stayed in corporate for a while. I office management for a few different types of companies, and they were all smaller businesses, but they were generating a good amount of money. And I did billing. I did like all sides of business on that end, as far as that. And then I actually had a wedding planning business for a while, which is essentially just stage management, but for a wedding. So I mean, it was like putting on a show. It was the same thing. That's where I really kind of got the entrepreneurial craving, and I no longer do that. But then it just kind of shifted into like wanting to that with a business partner, and I was like, okay, how can I take my corporate skills, everything else that I've done, and do it remotely, because I wanted just to have more flexibility. I was done with the being chained to my desk but never getting anything done like a manager. I was just struggling, and I wouldn't say I was struggling, it was just keep everyone on the same page, same team. And small business, it's really hard. And
Mm.
there was a lot, it just was time for me to move on. I wasn't super passionate about the corporate office I was in, or I cared about what we were doing, but it wasn't me, right? And so I was like, okay, what can I do? So I actually just started like online business management, because I was already managing businesses, so why not do that virtually for people? And then through that personal development journey, I realized I really appreciated and was better at the high level, like and the how to, but not actually doing the how. I just kind of shifted gears as far as like how I was supporting business owners into really focusing on my strengths. So like I'm really good at the doing. It's my zone of excellence, but my zone of genius is actually more zoomed out. So troubleshooting and having that bird's eye view to be able to like, oh, this is where we're going and this is what's happening. Here's the, 5 ways we can get there, and just kind of going with that. But I've always been like a strategist in the sense of like stage management is a lot of strategy. Like, this is where we're at in the scene. This is where we need to get to, like with the set, like who's doing what, and planning ahead for the worst to happen and hoping for the best was like most of my life, both in, professional and like settings, but also in, my home life, and just having to predict things around me. It wasn't the best situation. It wasn't terrible, but it was chaos. And so having to know what I was getting into and navigate for my own like nervous system regulation and surviving, I've just kind of shifted that and make it more of like a superpower rather than a weakness, right? And so kind of like how I felt into it. Obviously, it's a short version. There's a lot to it. And I mean, since I've started doing this, I've changed so much, even just in that, and even how I'm focusing my efforts. It still comes back to the same mission, the same kind of overall purpose, but like how that looks keeps evolving and changing. And so it's exciting, but also like I'm in the unknown with other business owners that I'm trying to help, in a way of like business owner, I'm also navigating the same things I'm helping people do kind of in real time. So it's interesting.
It's super cool. And I think I always think that wherever we are in our life journey, everything that we've done previously still it
Yes.
kind of leads us there. Not that you could plan it,
No.
but it just leads it there somehow.
Nothing's a waste. And I think
Absolutely.
we end up creating the meaning of what all those things are and what played for us, and we can use it to help lift us up or tear us down, right? using
Yeah,
everything as a
absolutely.
positive, and seeing how all those lessons and triumphs and all those things tie together into what you actually want to do and where you're going. Because there's, especially if you're trying to stay true to who you are, there's always an element of it that was perfect for who you were in that moment, and to then be able to take that things with you as you evolve and grow and change, I think is like a necessity for us to actually what we're meant to do, whatever that is. So
No, love it. I want to go back and just ask you about the wedding planning,
mhm.
only because, so I got married, planned my own wedding, didn't find it stressful at all, but I was in corporate as a program manager. So it's like you make a list, you do the list gets done. It's that
It's
simple.
project management. Yeah.
Exactly. But I'm just really curious, having never met an actual wedding planner before, is are bridezillas real? Like, and did you have to deal with any?
I actually had more issues with the Mogs, mother of the grooms.
Right, interesting.
Yeah, those were
Nice.
typically the worst. A couple, when we kind of vetted our couples, you meet them to see if you're a good fit for what they want, and vice versa. It's like a job interview, right? Both parties. It's not just please hire us. It's also like, do we
Mm-hmm.
like you? Like, do we like
Yeah.
where, what
Will
you
you
guys are
drive us
creating?
mad?
Yeah. And, how did you guys meet? And what's your relationship like? And so it's like you kind of come in almost like therapist in a way, like not really, but like you end
Yeah,
up kind of
yeah,
playing
I
that
can believe
role.
that.
So you want to
Yeah.
know what you're getting into. Um, and brides, and I would say they were more stressed. Like they just didn't have time to actually dedicate to what they were wanting and doing, or they were pulled in different directions because of family dynamics or drama happening. And so, for sure, or kind of rude, but most of the time they just weren't even present. And so it was like, I hope and I witnessed most of the time them being present in the actual wedding activities.
Good,
But the
good.
whole process leading up or in the in-betweens of like, hey, when you're checking in, like, do you want to move on to this next activity? Like we're, or the sun's setting, you guys got to go. Like, and some of those interactions sometimes were not as friendly or hopeful or whatever. But then you see them smiling and dancing with the person and the pictures look nice and you're like, okay, and so you just kind of, there's a lot of like letting go and that too, like letting people
Mm-hmm.
have their emotions and being okay with it being uncomfortable. But I would say that it was mostly mother of the grooms that were like their first son being married or something, or their baby, and it was just like seemed to be kind of like left out of the planning process, and then wedding day would come and it was like they had to be in it, and it was like, okay. So some of the mother brides were a little but they were also like not live nearby. So it was all just a sense of like control, and like feeling out of
Mm.
control or not being a part of it in the way that they hope to. And that's where those like discomfort, like their diva-ness would come out. And it wasn't, and it wasn't about us personally. It was just dynamics and things that we weren't really of, but you just kind of got to take it. And, I think knowledge, everything always ended positively. So I never had anything too terrible, or we were able to like apologize in a way of like, we didn't realize that happened. Sorry, and whatever, but we have any refunds, let's say. So, you know,
No news is good news.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I was like, we'll
Yeah.
just take it. So,
But I think that's interesting, because then I think that's a really good foundation again for the business
yeah,
strategy side of things. Because, like you say, business owners turn up. Sometimes they're not really checked into what's going on. They want you to solve the problem, but they don't remember they have to take part as well,
yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah. No, really. Again, nothing's been a waste. I mean, stage management and planning, those are pretty much the same thing. And then you take the mindset of that work and the strategy and the planning and all the looking at everything zoomed out, but also down to every detail. That's what we do in creating strategy for businesses. It's like there's like that, even just the auditing period of like, okay, what do you do? What's going on in your business? What do you think the problem is? And really just starting to like investigate part of
Mm.
that too. And so, yeah, I agree with you. It's like it all ties in together. And I feel like the biggest change for me, or how side of the evolution, is just how much I have like actually just become more myself. It's like all
Mm-hmm.
that other stuff was like helping either create layers or remove layers of like what I needed to know and learn for myself. And then I just feel like a more true version of me is coming out, and it gets to be a lot easier than it was doing some of those other positions and roles, which has been great.
I think it's really interesting observation. I think I've been in a similar position in that I feel that I lost sight of who I was
Mm-hmm.
doing corporate work. And that's not to say I didn't enjoy myself or have good friends, but I got to the point where I was like, I don't want to die at a desk.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in my 20s, I spent my 20s basically having a really good time. By that, I had like loads of different jobs. I joined the army. I traveled around lots. I didn't really settle on anything.
Yeah.
But I was able, I think the 20s were like figuring out who I
Yeah.
was. But in my 30s, I kind of got serious and I was working corporate and I was like on this corporate ladder now and this is what one should do. And then I realized, no, it's not what I want to do. And I realized I'm actually unemployable because I just, not that there's nothing wrong with working for corporations or companies or anything,
No.
but for me, I felt I'd lost sight of who I was. And when I retrained in therapy and became self-employed again, I was like,
This is
this
what
is
I need.
it, you know, this is
Yeah,
what, and
I feel like with experimentation process you got to do in your 20s so much, and I feel like I'm kind of doing the reverse of that, where I was so serious, so young, did all the things correctly. I was a firstborn daughter, if that means anything to anybody, like by the book, tight reins, on myself that, I just were
mm,
put on me and I kept. And I was like, oh, this is what we need. And I get to like unravel a little bit in a way and then rebuild what I want and need, which is awesome. But I think what I'm seeing, at least in I'm in, and what I'm really hopeful for is hearing more people talk about that, where they're kind of in a situation or corporate or even a business that they're just like not super passionate about anymore. They're like, what do I do? How do I make this better? And for you, it was getting out on your own. And, I see the other side of it is like these multi-passionates that are like, I'm really passionate about this thing, but how do I monetize it? How do I make this
mm,
make sense, like financially with the world that we're in? And you need a certain amount of income to survive. And some of that stuff hasn't been viewed as um, worthy of a certain paycheck, or we haven't put value in as many art things or creative things, and point. But it's just, I feel like we're slowly moving into an era where people get to be more themselves, and the things that do excite them, whether that is more clinical, like being a therapist, or scientific, but doing it in their own way, right? And it's not
yeah.
chained to a desk, and it's not necessarily having someone else be your boss. I keep seeing these people start leaning more and more into what they want, and maybe it hasn't been done before, or it hasn't been modeled for them in a way that makes sense, and it gets me really excited about. I hope that our culture keeps changing and shifting into valuing those things that are unique to us and that do light us up, so that we can actually have a more like equally like more than what we're doing. And I think I'm just a shift happening, and then you're talking about like, just even being my own boss, and like that we taught how to be entrepreneurs. Is you just kind of like
Absolutely.
learn, or you can be mentored in it, or you can hire someone to help you and everything, but it's not really an option when you're in school. Like no one really talks about it. And I think that was on purpose in a lot of ways. Like to set us up to kind of be workers and not be the visionaries, and to this is the way it needs to be done. And I keep seeing shifts into a new, more beautiful, I think, future, and I'm here for it.
I love that positivity because actually I don't always hear it phrased in such a positive way.
Mm,
But I totally agree. Like when like my mum's a teacher, was a teacher her whole life, and she retired when she was 69, and she basically retired because she feels no longer about the kids,
mm,
and and she cared deeply. But I think we've had this conversation around, academic education isn't for everybody, and that's from a teacher, right? She agrees that it's not right for everybody. And we've had the conversation around the model that we have in school in the UK, and I think similar in the US, is basically designed for the Victorian workhouses.
mm-hmm.
You educate them enough that they can be useful in a workhouse situation,
Yeah.
but never change the status quo, never change the balance of power. And this is the great power of the internet,
Yes.
is that it has opened up the doors. Now, you have to temper that with there are people out there who are absolutely batshit crazy talking about really weird stuff that wouldn't have a voice but do because it's the
Right.
internet. But being positive, it also says that I can talk to you from across the Atlantic.
Yes.
I can study remotely, not in classroom, although, there's argument around the in-person versus remote. But I think I totally agree that you are right, that there is a shift. And I totally agree that it wasn't something that was ever taught to us.
Mm-mm.
And that's the hardest part as well, is learning that it's okay to do something which isn't in that mainstream narrative.
Right. Or that it's possible to do something different,
Mm.
Like I think we all have inner dreams and longings and these little whispers of, hey, what if we did it this way? Or why do we do it this way? Even just questioning. We
Mm.
weren't taught to think for ourselves. Most of us until college. And then we go, huh, oh, I can have an opinion about this. I get to write a paper about why I agree or disagree. And we're all confused. And so it almost feels like starting over with college in a
Mm.
way. And obviously your major, what you're doing, there's still a lot of that, like, for corporate, going on in there. Also like brain development. Our brains aren't even developed till like 25 when we're like,
Mm-hmm.
teaching and I don't want to say brainwashing, but in a sense, brainwashing, are, a certain standard, right? Of doing things. It's, it is to make those changes and make, moves like that the older you get. And I think also been a disservice to how we've done things is that, it's, I mean, I'm not a retired person, but I feel like that's when people wake up again, and they're like, oh, I love this. And,
I
they
can
get to have
finally
fun
live.
again. And I'm like, can we have
Yeah,
fun
yeah, yeah.
before then? Can we can
Absolutely.
we be who we want to be in the meantime? And yes, we got to survive, make more sense and feel better. And I'm really big
Yeah.
on that. And right now, my latest thing is really focusing on being more and doing less. And so it doesn't mean I don't do anything, but it's stuff that lights me up. It's stuff that's maybe necessary, but I do it in a fun way, and different things like that. And just actually showing up who I want to be and the direction I want to head in rather than the how to, honestly, and like the step by step. It's like actually like, okay, like if I was already where I want to be as a person, what would I do today or what would this look like? And
Yeah.
just having fun with it that way. Because one of my biggest fears is getting to a certain age or, and I didn't live up to my own potential of what I wanted to do or what I wanted to try. And I want to that kind of regret, and people don't even think about that till later. And then they're like, oh, I didn't do the thing, you know?
It's the old regrets of the dying thing, and no one ever had an regret of not working too much. Like, everyone says, "I wish I worked less." I've just, in fact, just before this call started, I was on the phone to my mum, and I've got a new game that I'm playing this year, which is called Extreme Day Trips.
Oh,
The game is how far can I go for as cheap as possible. And the other week I went to Albania for the day. It cost me £30
oh my
to
gosh.
fly there. And anyway, I told my mum about this. So my mum loves to travel. My dad doesn't really travel very well anymore. And she was like, we could go for a day and I wouldn't have to worry about dad. I was like, right, gotta find you something soon. So I've just found a trip to Venice for the two of us for the day. We'll have like 5 hours there, but it's 40 quid.
Oh my
And
gosh.
the crazy thing is, for me to get to London on a train costs more than 40 quid. Like to fly to Venice, I'm like, this is why the world is screwed up, right? Because I
Mhm.
can fly to Venice for less than I can to get a train to London, which is 2 hours away. So anyway, we're going to Venice for the day in March.
Oh my
There we go.
gosh. I love that. I don't know if you know, but here in the US, like everything is so spread out that's like
Mm-hmm.
it's in Montana, so I'm not close to anything fun. I am, but I'm not. Like again, it's so big compared to Europe that it's like I mean, it's like mind-blowing. Like we're going to the UK in September. And I was like pulling up a comparison of like miles like into the US and I was like, "Oh my god, like it's so close together." Like I know there's still transportation to consider and everything, but like it is just insane like how different it is. But all I have to say is that they're similar to what your extreme day trip situation is. I actually came across on social media a couple that live in the US and they just randomly search for like the cheapest flights that day kind of thing or like this next weekend like it's very last minute but it's like day trips and they go to like major cities for a day and then they come back home that night and they're exhausted and they're
I
zonked
mean,
but they'll leave on a Saturday and then they have Sunday to reset and then they're good to go and I'm like so my husband and I we could just like fly to Chicago today and it's like it's not that hard. We make it hard.
It isn't. I mean, like when it's just hand luggage as well, and that's all it is. So
Yeah.
I've been very lucky this. I've done it twice so far. I went to Faro in Portugal and I managed to leave on the day that our temperatures dropped to like minus something, which is really rare where I live in the UK.
Yeah.
And I arrived in like 18 degrees Celsius, which I don't know what it is in Fahrenheit, but it's lovely.
Lovely.
It's not minus. It's not minus anything. So I missed that. And then we had another storm, and the storm hit just as I left the country to go to Albania, which was again 18 degrees.
Oh
And I came back and the storm had passed. So, but you're right. I mean, it's funny because Americans always say to me, "Oh, where do you live?" And I go, "Well, actually, I live on the border of Wales." But they go, "Is that near London?" Now, in UK terms, no. But in US terms, absolutely yes.
Yeah, it's down the
it's
street
2.5 hours
compared to where we're at.
Exactly. And I think that's why people from the UK don't appreciate, as you say, how big the US is.
Yeah.
That in comparison, and I love where I live. So it's a county called Gloucestershire. I live in a Forest of Dean on the border of Wales.
Oh.
It's very, very English, as you can imagine. Well, actually, partly Welsh in fairness. But I'm about 3 hours from 90% of the country. In reality, like Scotland takes me 4 or 5 or 6. Northeast takes me 4 hours. But basically, most places I'm about 3 hours on, and it's such a privilege.
Yeah.
And then you start to think about this in terms of other places like the US and go, I really can go anywhere really easily. I can go to London and get a flight to Venice. And it costs me, it's crazy. So do your day trips, go to different cities.
Yeah, I mean 3 hours for me, I can't leave the state in 3 hours.
I mean, I'm in France.
Yeah. It's just it's disappointing in a way because I actually feel so drawn to like European culture and stuff. Never been. I've been abroad to
September.
Egypt, but I haven't. That's the extent of my abroadness. Very different situation than going to London or anywhere. But that's why we're hoping to go this year. So excited to.
No, definitely. I'm excited for you.
Thank you.
There we
Thank
go.
you.
Well, we'll let you know when you come. We'll arrange something.
Yes. Or at least give me some insights. Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah. Where to go. I mean, I might not be the coolest person, but I know where I'd go. So there we go. With your transition then, and what's really interesting about your journey is you're creative, then corporate, then creative. But have you had any culture shocks? And I like to talk about reverse culture shock as well. So, having been a creative and going back to be creative with that little bit in the middle, did you have reverse culture shock as you got so used to, like you said, you had to re-find yourself again?
I think that's where my rigidity maybe kind of some of that, where corporate's very laid out, there's organized depending on the company. Okay, where I was living and working, like most of the time there's not an HR. Like it's just the manager or it's the boss when he's in a good mood, or it's like there's not like a set thing. I will say there was one moment that's actually kind of funny that I think of every now and then. I right after college I actually struggled to find a job because I did the thing, but then there was no one hiring and the things. But I eventually got a job at a well set up corporate office with the traditional HR, the manager, and it was literally like I felt like I walked on the office, like the set of The Office, like either version, like more like the American version because I'm in America. But it was like, oh gosh, there's like a break room and you do the thing, and it was like as a creative, it was just so. I was like, are people for real? Like, are we really this serious all the time? And the notes that go up in the office of don't do this. And, and it was just like, are we not adults? I don't know. It was just, there was some culture shock to that because it was so corporate, compared to what I had done before in my other office jobs, because it was not set up that way. But I was like, I literally was like, oh my God, I'm on the set of The Office. It's real. People actually do this. It's not a comedic joke. There's really an Angela in The Office. Okay, I know who to avoid and who to, who's who and what roles they play. And it was so interesting. I find that people get and bogged down, I think was kind of sad too, is just other jobs. It's just it's their whole life. So much, and it ends up becoming part of who we are. And it's if you're not in a place that you actually really care about, exciting, happy way, it's just you start to care about things that don't matter, and get upset about things. And And I think that was hard for me to adjust to as well. It's not that I didn't care about what we're doing, but like honestly, some of like to say like they were toxic, but it was just so like zoomed in on issue, like just so nitpicky about something, or like there was no room for like to make a mistake or like not understand because you didn't
Mm.
explain it, or like it was just sometimes people get mad about silly things, and it was like really disheartening because it was like I'm here like struggling to try to figure this out, and not because I wasn't competent, but it was because they had no training program, there was no
Mm-hmm.
documentation, and it was just like chaos, and it was like, okay, like how do I'm sorry I made a silly mistake, but like the remedy is just calling a patient and going, hey, there was a mix up. I made a mistake. I'm still learning the system. Can we get this rescheduled? Like it's easy fixes. And it's just when people
Yeah.
are unhappy, becomes unhappy. And I think that was kind of like a culture shock with corporate, especially. And then in the creative world, it's just the shock of like financially stable and also the lack of like business know-how creatives have. And so like to be in like a foot in both worlds almost, it's really interesting. It's like, I'm one of my best friends. I we don't talk about business, but she's like, yeah, asking me some business questions. Like, you don't know? Oh, oh, okay, let me help you out. Like, it was just because we're not taught again how to be entrepreneurs, like even to like a creative person be successful, they're not even set up for success. Like there's nowhere for them to
Mm.
go except for to hire someone, or someone's done it before, they get to experiment and try it themselves. And it's just, I guess, the whiplash of like too much business and not enough heart and passion. The other side of it, not having any of that like structure and corporate support that creatives need in order to thrive. And so it's just been just a whiplash to it. So I don't know if that answers your question the way you thought it would, but I hope it makes sense.
No, it does, and I think it also presents how really you kind of are the unicorn that creatives need, right? Because you understand both worlds, and you can translate, and you can approach so not as to scare them,
Yeah.
with like overwhelming them with
Or
things.
for them to feel stifled too. I think most creatives are like, oh my gosh, no, structure will ruin me and I have to flow. And I'm like, okay, but like if you look at like, and not to get too like spiritual or woo-woo or anything, but there's, masculine energy, there's feminine energy. We all have both. And the masculine energy is a lot like corporate, and that's patriarchal. Like it's very like what our society has been made up of. And but what it does is create a structure, the vessel that holds, or can be the vessel that holds that creative feminine energy flow, and they can work together really well. But in the corporate world, you have none of that because that's not the way society's set up. And then you go to creatives, and they're like, oh my god, I don't want corporate. It's like, okay, but that's not what structure is. It can really create a foundation for you to be able to do all the things you want to do the way you want to do it, in a way that's actually sustainable, like that actually
Yeah.
has financial backing, that actually has for everything as far as scheduling. And it's just there's a lot miscommunicated or like misunderstandings about what it means to have a strategy or to be like successful. Even the ideas of what success is has been taught to us as just like having lots of money, working really hard all the time. And I'm like, actually, I don't want that personally. So, it's just figuring out how to make that make sense, translate in business and in the world.
And I heard this recently from someone else that the word wealth came from maybe the Greek, maybe the Latin, one of the old languages. But essentially, it didn't mean money. It meant like well-being. And
Yes.
of course, we've taken it to mean just that one pillar, but it was all the pillars.
Yeah.
And so that realization, I mean, like we can't avoid the fact that the world we live in, we need to have
Yes.
money. Like it's just the world. And I show my massive geeky side here. I'm quite a fan of Star Trek in terms of I like the concept of the world they live in where money isn't a big deal and it's all about learning and creativity.
Yes.
I love that idea of a world.
That's where I'm hoping we
Um,
keep heading towards, by the way. So
right?
keep
Yeah.
that nerdy vision alive, because that's what we need. We need more people like us that are like, no, this is possible. It's been shown to
Yeah.
us. We can do it.
Well, I mean, on that, I mean, like again, my husband's more of the Star Trek like proper nerd than I am, but I just enjoy, like I couldn't tell you all the different
I don't know anything
seasons, but
about
I
Star
love.
Trek except for the basics. So
yeah, I just love the fact that they had this world. But what's interesting is you're right though, because like they had video phones way before we had video phones. They had different ways. So I'm like, maybe it is possible. Maybe we can get over money and we can just enjoy and create and learn and get on and not be horrible to each other. That'd be
I
nice.
really hope so. You can feel free to cut this out, but there are theories out there from people that like Star Wars could represent our past and Star Trek can represent our future.
Mm.
We won't get into that. It's a whole nother
Of
podcast, but
of all the conspiracy theories I've heard, that's the one I like the most at the
it's fun.
moment.
It's fun, right? It doesn't hurt to
It's
hope
fun.
for that, right?
No one's going to get hurt by that one.
No,
No,
as long as you are
let's
functioning and surviving,
yeah, let's
thriving in your day-to-day life, we can keep those ideas open. I think it's fantastic. No, but
definitely.
the wealth, going back to that, I think that's why the holistic side is so important to me, because I've done the burnout. I've done to the full extent of
Mm,
being busy. I've made lots of money. I've done all of that, but now I'm realizing, like, and the more I know myself better and actually like deconditioned so much of me and unlearned so much, that it's really about, for me, a slower paced life. It really is about having time freedom. That's wealth. Like, having the amount of time that I have right now is something that's so valuable to have,
yeah.
and it might not always translate to, jets, but like that's not actually success for a lot of people. That's not what a lot of people want. um you made me think of just now too, networking group, a women's networking group last month, and it was towards the beginning of the month, or no, oh my gosh, it was this month, January. Like 35 years, and I don't know how to handle
Oh.
it. um the first week of this month, which literally feels like a lifetime
Which is
ago.
still this month.
Yes.
Yep.
There was stuff about the lottery going on. It was in the news, something, I don't know, they were still looking for the winning ticket or something, but it was like $10 billion or something, which is,
Right. A lot
substantial,
of money.
a nice chunk of
Yeah.
change. Thing we did for fun for this networking group was we went around and thought, what would we do if money was no object, right? What would you do
Mm,
right now if there was nothing you had to like worry about financially? What would you do with that money, right? So like in some ways it would be solving a financial issue for somebody else, or work or whatever. But like nothing anyone said was like outrageous. It wasn't the private jet Instagram life. It was, or whatever, the influencer life. It was, projects and different, like doing things that was of their values, right? And we all
mm,
just got to like dream a little, and it just was so magical to think about, oh, if money was removed, what would we do? And it was, again, nothing was out of reach. And it's just, I think we lose touch of that. Like, our society is all about money, and we have to survive and we have to pay the bills, that we forget, like, oh, what if we zoomed out? Like, what if we didn't have to worry about this? What would we do? And I think the purpose is to experiment with that question and what that would look like, not just in business, but I think in life too, to kind of serve as like a check-in, to be like, okay,
mm.
possible. Can I make that happen? And a lot of times we can, And for me, like one of them was just traveling more. And it's like, oh, okay, well, let's plan a trip, to the UK. Let's, like, what's holding us back? Let's go have a crazy weekend, day trip. Let's go do that, It's not crazy. It's just, I'd be doing more of it if money and time wasn't a thing, like something to worry about. So, about wealth is, it's not just money value. That's such an important point that you made.
Thank you. And I also love what you've said around rediscovering yourself. As I don't know if it is an age thing, as I said, but I think I forget who I am. I don't know if I don't even think you can say it's a woman thing, but I think they reach a point in your life where you suddenly wake up one day and go, is this me?
Mm-hmm.
Is this what I want to do? And for some people, they say no, but don't change anything anyway because they're too afraid to.
Yeah.
And that's really sad. But also, it's understandable because the world is overwhelming and
Yeah.
it's hard and we all need
You have
money.
to survive too.
But
Just think about like
exactly.
your psyche. Like
Yeah.
you might realize this isn't me, but the alternative is too scary, or like not even
Yeah.
like accessible. So,
Well, what I do love about your story, though, is generally speaking, from a psychological point, we tend to change for two reasons. One is to move away from
mm-hmm.
pain, one is to move towards pleasure. And often it's pain that gets us started, but it's pleasure that keeps us
I
going.
love that.
And I really think that actually for you, I don't know that I feel that you found the pleasure very quickly once you moved, once you started shifting. You kind of went, "This is who I am," because it was rediscovering yourself. And it's remembering that actually beyond the pain, however big or small it is, pain is temporary. There's pleasure at the end of it.
It really is. And I'm so thinking about that a little bit, because when it comes to a lot of times with like businesses or business owners and getting to know people, we tend to buy from people more so than just a company name, right? Nowadays, especially, we're becoming more aware and conscious of that. Buyers are being more conscious. I in no way want to manipulate buyers. I'm never like, I'm not coming from like a pay me situation. But storytelling is so important in people get to know you. And I have, we all have trauma, we all have pain, we all have stories like that, and I'm no way comparing my trauma to somebody else's, or mine is not as bad or not as good, but mine is pretty typical, not this like rags to riches or zero to hero situation. And I've just been sitting with that as far as like, how do we tell our story in a way? Isn't this like my life? I am dramatic internally. you know, I'm excitable. Life on the outside has not been dramatic. It's been an internal war. It's been a back and forth that the rediscovering has been internal. It's not been influenced by outside circumstances, but not from in a sense of pain you were talking about. And so it is something I'm still mulling over and kind of navigating for myself because I'm still in the story too. Like I'm not dead. So it is figuring out like how do I share my story or who I am or the changes that happen when it's been so internal. It's not this the situation I was in and this is where I'm at now because I did XYZ. Like there's no obvious transformation except for what I've experienced internally. And so it's very interesting. Talking about pain and pleasure. And it's like my story really does come from wanting more pleasure, more so than the pain. And so it is such a blessing. Like I'm no way being like, I wish I had a rougher upbringing than I do, but I'm like, how do I use that in a way that helps more people? Because a lot of people find the help they need and the resources they need from people that have had really similar or traumatic stories that are now healed. I think that's fantastic. But I had so much like inner healing, also had to happen, but it wasn't because of this pain. Like I said, it was wanting better. And so it's just really interesting.
I think, personally, as a guy, a businessman, he's Irish, and I've seen him speak a few times, and he has this same thing, right? He's like, I had two loving parents. I got all the qualifications, I did everything right. It just wasn't what I wanted. But then he tells his story, goes, but so I thought I'd reimagine my story, and he's like, I was abandoned on the river in a reed basket and raised by wolves, and I lived in a castle, But I think. I think for me, and I'm the same thing. I don't have any major trauma in my life, and people go, "But you served in the army, and you went to Afghanistan." I was like, "Yeah, but that wasn't like I chose to do those things.
Yeah.
I was prepared to do those things, and I came out relatively whole. Who knows what I was like before? Because I was always crazy before." But I don't consider myself to have had a traumatic life, although I have seen traumatic things. I don't consider myself to be particularly unique. I went to a good university. I have a good degree from a good university. I've done all sorts of things. But then I tell myself, and I think it's the same for you, which is like, if there's someone like, if I'm doing this and I'm, quote unquote normal, whatever that means, like there are other people who are also normal.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to know that you don't have to have had an extreme story to change your story. You can change your story because you want to change your story.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't serve you anymore. And that's just as acceptable as having overcome massive trauma. And let's be honest, I'd love it again for us to have a world where people don't have to overcome these things, because then as a race, we've definitely, evolved a bit, maybe.
Taking care of each other more.
The truth, exactly, But I think it's important for people to understand that you can do extraordinary things and be ordinary.
Yeah.
For want of a better word.
I agree. And I thank you for this conversation, because honestly, it was just validating even hearing like, oh, we change either from pain or, move away from pain or move towards pleasure or what. And I'm just like, oh, yeah, that's what I did. You made an observation, reflected it back to me. And I'm like, oh, yeah. Okay. And then the fact that you're also validating, you're like, I'm normal. And I'm like, yeah, the normal people that like, no disrespect to anyone that's had a really hard traumatic life, and I empathize and I can understand as much as I can. And, I hope all the healing and support that those people need, but that's not my area. Like, I can't speak to that. And I can't also make promises, especially like some of the stuff does play into business sometimes. And it's like, I'm not the business owner that had the same experience as you, but I could also in a position to make some changes. I in what could be, and so knowing my limits and stuff when I'm working with people is important, of course. But it is just interesting when it comes to storytelling. And, I would love to be a speaker and do more of that kind of stuff. And someday I want to write a book, like, but what's my rags to riches story? So I'm going to steal that. I was abandoned in the river in a basket and raised by wolves. And, I could say that,
do that. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, on social media, no one's going to know.
No.
Just get some AI generated content going, some pictures up there. And once it's out there, it becomes fact, right? I mean, Facebook no longer has fact checkers, so no one's going to know.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation. No, but I mean, it is just, there are people, you're right, though. There are people that have had a normal experience, but at least for me, I feel a call to have a bigger impact. No, I haven't had the same story as someone else that's made a really big impact before me. And so it's like, okay, there's still a place for that. And it's not because I'm going to try to claim that I have everything figured out or that I even had one of those stories. But it's like, that doesn't mean I can't help people in some way, or the people like us that have similar stories that are like, I just want to do something bigger than what I've done. And I think that's easier if you haven't had that story.
Yeah, and I think just sometimes being one step ahead of the person behind you, right? Mm-hmm. They can still follow you, and learn from that. And I think and again, like I obviously I do a lot of work with trauma in my therapy practice, and I can do that because I have seen trauma. I've seen the effects it has on people firsthand in war zones and other places.
You're also like educated in it too. Like,
yes,
it's not just from experience. You actually know what you're talking about.
I got the coloring book and the connect the numbers book. It's all good. But I think what I was going to say was, you still need people, everyday people, to be up to, because it shouldn't be a case of to be special you have to have had horror happen to you. It should be the case of we are all special because we are all unique, which is true. And I think the downside of the internet, we talk about the plus sides, bring us all together. The downside is, because you're in that sea of noise against so many people, it becomes, how do I stand out? How am I unique? And of course, terrible life events make you unique. People love a drama. People love a tragedy.
Oh my gosh, we love it. I love a drama. And that's why I'm so dramatic in my head.
Yeah.
Theater kid.
So break out into song.
Yes.
Nothing wrong with that. But I think it's important for anybody to realize that whoever you are, whether good or bad or normal, average, I don't really like using the word normal because I think that's a bit of a weird one. I think if you think you're normal, you're probably not normal.
Yes.
Anyone who claims to be normal, I wouldn't trust them, really. So but it's just important to remind ourselves that we are unique. We all have special gifts. Right. We all have special skills, and we should be celebrated for them without having to need to be raised by wolves in a reed basket in Outer Mongolia.
I agree. And I think what's, talking about purpose and stuff, I am a big believer that if we didn't have a point as an individual, we wouldn't be here. There's a reason. It could be big, it could be small, as far as what you feel like your own purpose or mission is, or what you bring to the table, have to be making this huge impact, or being a front facing person, or having a platform. It doesn't have to look like that, or even having a business. Still a purpose in it, and I still think that's like, okay, I'm not the the dramatic traumatic story, right? But that doesn't mean that we don't have a point in being here. And I agree, like the sense of, one step ahead. Like, yes, I would love to be any sort of lighthouse, or just like lighting a torch. I'm not necessarily the leader, but I can help point a direction. It's like, I don't claim to have it all figured out. It's just, if I can help shine light on something, that helps somebody, that's so important to me. And I appreciate this therapy session you've given me in this moment to like validate the
No
feelings that I
charge.
feel, you know, and it's like not to be the only one thinking it. Sometimes, you know, you're like, you have these thoughts in your head and you're like, okay,
Yeah.
I have a typical life, but I don't want a typical outcome. Like I want to do more. And I think if you are a normal, quote unquote, person, you know, you don't have anything super dramatic or traumatic that's happened in your life compared to somebody else. Like if you want to change, like you said, and make a bigger impact, if you want to do that, that doesn't mean like you should listen to that. Looks like is going to be very different for everyone, and that's also what's unique about you is what you want to do and what excites you, and I think that's so important to keep in mind.
Definitely. Wonderful. Okay, I feel we could chat
Oh
forever,
yes.
but we should probably draw a line. But how can people find you if they want to get in contact?
The easiest is on socials. My handle is consulting Kay. Normally links in bios and things like that. It makes it a little bit easier than trying to find my business. Or you can just Google search Kay Sibson and comes up about me. So
It does. It does indeed. I will put the links in the show notes as well. Kay, thank you ever so much. It's been wonderful.
thank you so
Looking forward
much.
to your trip to the UK.
Yes, I can't wait. I'll be there soon.
It'll be amazing. September won't be, well, I mean, by the time this goes out, it's probably going to be April, May. So you'll be halfway there. Halfway
Perfect.
there.
I can't wait.
There we go. All right, then. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.